Welcome to episode 22 of the CVD Podcast. I'm Adam Beaumier, and in this episode, I got to interview George Evans. Now, George is just a regular guy born a little bit differently. What I mean by that is George is transgender. He's a trans male, meaning he was born female and is now a male. And he's actually been living life as George for the last 10 to 11 years. And I first came across George's story totally by accident. I was browsing LinkedIn one day and I saw that he had posted this post was trending, and this person named George Evans had posted saying that he was transgender. And it was a lengthy post. There was a lot of context to it. And in the episode, when we start, I do read that post. So all the details are going to be in the episode. But I read this post and I was like, wow, like this is extremely courageous. Like you're being so courageous and so open and so vulnerable on LinkedIn, which is notoriously known for being like a more professional platform where business professionals can network and meet each other. And so immediately I had to reach out to him. So I sent him a message. I told him about the Comfort via Discomfort podcast and what we're trying to achieve. And I said, I'm interviewing people from around the world that have different backgrounds. And I think your story would be incredible to tell. Let me know if you're interested. And he immediately jumped on. He's like, yeah, of course, I would love to tell my story. But we wanted to do it in a different point of, in a different type of format. What I mean by that is George and I got together and he said, Adam, when we do this episode, I want you to ask anything that comes to your mind. I want you to be like that friend that doesn't have a filter. Okay. So as soon as something pops in your head, ask me that question or make that comment. And I'm not going to take offense to anything. I literally just want to hear what's going through your head, because if you're thinking it, then other people from around the world are going to be thinking it as well. And this gives us an opportunity to talk about it, to discuss it, and to really make sure that we're being as respectful as we can to each other, because at the end of the day, we're all humans and we want each other to live authentically. So in this episode, we talk about his entire story, what his life was like before he was George and what his life is like now that he is George. And we go through his 10-year journey so far of being transgender, what it was like when he first made the decision and trying to figure out like who he was and why he felt like he needed to make changes for himself. We talk about the struggles that he had going through the healthcare system in the UK. He's from Wales, and so we talk about his struggles through the healthcare system in the UK. We talk about his struggle to fit in and to really have like a meaningful relationship and to find his place in the workplace among his colleagues. So we cover a lot of different topics. Like I said, I ask questions that just popped into my head. So yes, we even talk about what genitalia he has and how he decided on what surgery to get and what surgery not to get. We talk about hormone therapy. We talk about all of these different things. So it's a really, really unique conversation. I know I've never had this opportunity. I've never had a conversation like this with somebody before. And I don't know many people that have had a conversation like this before. So it's really intriguing. And if you've ever had questions around these topics, I'm sure you'll find it interesting as well. So I'd love for you to stick around, and I'd love for you to leave your comments, like leave a review or message me on Instagram or Facebook and let me know what you think about this episode, because it's a really unique opportunity to learn more about a world that I don't really explore very often. So I hope you enjoy it, and I am very excited to hear what you think. Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of the CVD Podcast. I'm here with George Evans. George, it's very, very nice to have you on the podcast.
Nice to be speaking with you as well. It's a long time coming on our side anyway.
Yeah, I know that we've tried to schedule this a couple times and here we are, right? But everything happens for a reason. So we're meant to have this conversation at this moment in time. So no, I'm super happy to see you. And this is going to be like, I'm so excited to dive into your story and to really get into a lot of the details and ask some questions, because I know I've never had a conversation like this. So, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people that haven't had a conversation like this either. So I think that this is going to be really interesting in terms of getting to know you and your story and learning a lot more about your perspective. And I'm 100% going to learn something probably within the first couple minutes of this chat. And I really hope that, and I really hope that the others, the people that are listening learn something too. So why don't we get started? Just give a quick introduction. Who are you as a person? What do you do for work? Maybe where do you live? And then we'll sort of go from there and get into your story.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm George. I'm from the UK, specifically Wales, not England, where people will always assume Adam has this problem because he's Canadian, but everyone thinks he's American. So you get that problem. But no, yeah, so I'm Welsh. I'm 29. I'm a designer, a digital designer, a graphic designer, whatever you want to call it. I work from home, as is a majority of the world nowadays. And yeah, I guess how me and Adam got connected was I decided to one day post something on LinkedIn about my life being trans and just how it's been such a weird conversation people have or don't want to have in the workplace. And I thought, I'm going to just post about being trans and maybe it'll educate one person that I'm connected with on LinkedIn that I've maybe worked with in the past that didn't know. And it just, it went a bit insane. And I'll let Adam explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the post on my phone here and I want to read it out. It is a little lengthy, but it gives a lot of context here. And once you posted this, I reached out and basically said like, hey, this is amazing. Like you're being so courageous by putting this out there. And I admire you so much for it. And like I have this podcast where we talk about, things that make us uncomfortable, and I want to feature different stories from around the world and have a lot of diversity. And I was like, this would be such an amazing story to tell. So let me read out the post and then we'll sort of go from there. So you posted this just under a month ago, June 30th. And you said, and this was on LinkedIn, by the way. So it's getting kind of more social media-esque, but it's known as like a networking or business site. So you said, I'm terrified to post this, but there's a voice inside saying, George, screw your fear. You could help people with your story. So ... I'm trans. Being trans isn't purely who I am. I am George before I am that trans guy that you know on LinkedIn. I was born and raised female, and in my late teens, I began discovering who I was. Their journey was a real living hell, as you can imagine. Honestly, still to this day, whenever I tell people, it feels like a huge weight off my shoulders. It's something I shouldn't have to hide, but society still has a long way to go until the LGBTQIA plus community feels safe to be open. So what happened? I was 19, cut my hair, and you referenced your picture. So I was 19, cut my hair, changed my name, and applied for university. I struggled. I couldn't physically cope with the work because of what was going on behind closed doors. I still appeared female to everyone around me. I was waiting to start hormone therapy, which takes years, by the way, but was fortunate to go private in my last year of university. I'd probably still be waiting now if I waited for the NHS, but that's a whole nother story. Student life is all about going out, dating, having fun, living a carefree life, but I was too scared to do that. I just wanted to hide. I had to explain to everyone I met that I was a male. Every night out, every social interaction became a task before I could relax, have fun, and just be myself. There were times I tried to end my life because I thought I'd never be happy or accepted. I thought all my family and friends would leave me, I'd never get a career, and never have a loving partner to spend the rest of my days with. Fast forward to now, I've been living my life as the real me, happy as I have ever been, with my family and friends by my side, a loving partner, a career I'm proud of, my own house, a stepdaughter, and the cutest dog in the world. I have it all. And that's because I chose to ignore society and live authentically me. Moral of the story, I'm just a regular guy that was born a little differently. And I want to be part of the change and be open about being trans for several reasons. Number one, to spread trans awareness in the workplace and life in general. Number two, to be a voice for those who are afraid or for those who can't for safety reasons. Number three, to show that trans people are people too. We're not aliens. Sorry to disappoint you. And number four, to educate people who don't understand or want to learn more. I could be here all day talking about this. I would love for this to be an open conversation. And if you're willing to learn, no question is a bad question in my eyes. Let's talk. Which is like amazing. Like, I'm so proud of you, first of all, for posting that, especially on LinkedIn. And I read that and I was like, I couldn't stop smiling. I can't stop smiling now. You can see, like, it makes me so happy and like fulfilled when people are courageous like that and when they're able to live authentically, because I think one of the biggest tragedies is when you have to hide, when you feel like you can't be yourself, and when you feel like there's no place for you in the world, you feel like you don't fit in anywhere. That's a really dark and lonely place. And so super proud of you for posting that. And why don't you make a couple comments on why you posted that and what's happened since you posted that? Because I know this thing really blew up. So why don't you give some details?
Yeah, so I basically, I mean, the past sort of, 10 years it's been since I've lived as me, as George. And, it's for the most part, it has been, in comparison to other trans people, I have had a very smooth journey. It's had a lot of downs in terms of mental health, but in terms of, people treating me badly and things like that, I've had it a lot easier than a lot of people that I've heard of different stories and things. But the most difficult place for me has been, relationships and workplace, trying to sort of juggle them and, be myself at the same time. So, I've got a beautiful girlfriend now who, loves me for me. So that is an issue. That's, I'm fine with that. And I've been in many relationships where I've been happy and, that's all been fine. But the one place I've always struggled to be me is the workplace, because being trans and having a job and being trans in your job and talking about it has always been such a wrong thing to do to the world, apparently.
Like a taboo topic almost.
Yeah, like you just don't talk about it. And, all these companies nowadays are all about diversity and they have it in their sort of like little sort of terms and conditions. Like, oh, we always have a diverse great range of people. But then they don't talk about it, and they just change their logo to like a pride flag every year, and that's all they do. So I've always questioned, like, do I tell people? But then, all my friends and family for years are like, George, you tell everybody, like you're trans. Every social event you go to, you're like, oh, you have to tell you're trans. Just give it a rest. Like, just be you and go and enjoy your night. Which, yes, I understand. But like I said in the post, I almost feel like I'm hiding something. And it's just me personally. There are tons of guys that I know, trans guys that, I told you last time we spoke, they live what's called a stealth life. And stealth meaning they just live, they don't tell people they're trans. They basically hide that. And that's fine. They're not really hiding it. It's such a weird word. This is the thing. It's such a weird word to say, because they're not hiding it from anybody. They're
not making it. They're just not making it publicly known, I guess, right?
Exactly. And it's like, you don't go around saying I'm a guy, because it's like, well, obviously, like you'd look at me and you'd say the same thing, right? You wouldn't go, okay, like it's cool. But, it's the fact that, they're choosing to live like that, which is fine. But to me, I always thought I will do that one day. I'll just won't tell people. I'll get to the stage where I physically look male and I'll walk down the street and I just don't have to explain myself. But I guess because I had so many years of having to explain myself, of having to say, well, by the way, and this is before I started hormones. So I looked very feminine. I looked, I was 19, 20, but I looked like, I guess, like a 10-year-old boy. Do you know what I mean? Like I hadn't gone through male puberty, so it just looked a bit weird, this 19-year-old boy that looked like a child.
Okay.
So it was just this really messed up like thing where, so I just thought at this stage in my life, I've got, everything around me. I've got this nice situation in my life. I've got, a girlfriend, I've got a job, I've got a house. And I thought, right, I'm going to just post on LinkedIn, because I noticed that LinkedIn, like you touched on before, LinkedIn's becoming less corporate and more social. People are now posting about themselves. They're being open about these conversations that have been such taboo topics for years. And one girl in particular, she's called Ellie Middleton. And past like year, I've been following her story. And she posted about herself having ADHD and autism. And as far as I'm aware, I have none of those things. But I've always been fascinated by, anything to do with the human brain that works differently to, I've always been fascinated. So I was following her story, and she posted about it on LinkedIn. And she got this huge following from it. She got all this support. She got, she was educating people that knew nothing of this topic. And I thought, that's such a brave thing to do. That's so brilliant that she's bringing light to something that's not really spoken about. And now she's getting, all these different brands approaching her to do talks for like Google, big people. And I thought, well, if she can post that, why can't I post about myself? What have I got to lose? She's educated all these people around the world. I'd love to be able to do that as well. And it's funny because, months ago, before this post, I was saying to my girlfriend and my friends and family, I was like, I'd love to go to schools or, college, universities, workplaces and talk about being trans. Just educating a few people. And then, I didn't know that just posting what I did on LinkedIn, that was reality. So I posted on LinkedIn just hoping that it would educate one or two people that I'd met, in person in a job beforehand. But no, it reached, a normal 6 million people, as it does.
Normal.
Yeah. I remember I went to pick up my stepdaughter from school. So I hit post, went to pick up my stepdaughter. Didn't think of that. I just thought, right, I might get a couple likes here and there. That's about it. I've posted things in the past. They've not done like that amazingly impactful before, but wasn't expecting anything. I just thought I'll just hit send and then maybe something might come of it. And I went to pick her up from school, and then within half an hour I got home and it had reached like 27,000 views. And I thought, okay, something's happening here. Like this is not what happens to my posts ever. And then it just kept going up and up and up and up. And yeah, the response was just incredible. Like the people that I'd reached from different places of the world, the stories that I was getting people messaging me privately, like a couple of like military men messaging me, and they'd fought in the war in Iraq and telling me how I'm brave for posting what I did. And
wow.
And then I would read further along, and their LinkedIn picture was, that of a middle-aged man, just pictured like a middle-aged man, bald head, just classic middle-aged man. And, I was reading this guy's story, and let's call him Bob just for the sake of the name. And I'm reading Bob's story. He's messaging me and he's saying all this really, powerful stuff. And I kept reading, and at the end of the message, Bob wrote, "So this is where I'm going to tell you that I'm actually Jessica. I've never told somebody this before, but you seeing your post has made me feel like I can be myself."
Oh, that's amazing.
Shared a photo of Jessica, them as Jessica, and then signed it off as Jessica. And I think she messaged me again, maybe a few days later, saying she'd just gone to a work fair as Jessica for the first time. And just all these little people, like these stories of people messaging me, and it's insane just how one post can impact so many people's lives. I just didn't think this would be possible.
Yeah.
And genuinely, it made me so happy, because when I first posted it, and the second I hit send, I'd been debating posting it for a whole month.
I was going to ask.
And I thought, it was Pride Month. I left it until the very last day of Pride Month. And I thought, I just have to post it today. It has to be today. It cannot be tomorrow. And I just went, right, post. And, I just was so scared to post it because, there's people who I used to work with who never knew. Like, I used to work somewhere. It was a very small marketing team. And, they were all lovely guys, don't get me wrong, but it was just all men. And I personally, I've always been much more comfortable. I mean, all my friends have been girls for all my life, pretty much. So I've just always been very comfortable around women. And, I'm not the most masculine guy as it is, but like, I just remember when I worked for this place with all these guys, and they'd all talk about, football and just sports or like just things I don't do. I don't have, each to their own, but I just had no, there was no common ground there. And I just remember, like, I always thought, are they gonna find out? Do they know?
Yeah. Wow.
Do they know about me? And I always felt really uncomfortable, and I always felt like I had to put I felt like I had to act a certain way because I didn't tell them that I was trans. I felt like I constantly had to put a sort of act on.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? So I always felt like I was hiding something about myself, and it goes back to, that's why I posted on LinkedIn, because I was just tired of, even if it was like a few people in my life that didn't know, I was just tired of feeling like in this one area of my life, I shouldn't have to hide who I am. And that's why I just decided to post. And
yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's amazing that you did. It's like you said, it's blown up. There's been like 6 million views. I noticed a couple changes on your LinkedIn profile, even like how you, like your little tags of how you talk about, like the tag on your profile now, for example, says regular guy born different trans activist, and then it has your position. Whereas before, I think it was a little bit different, right? And I think your background, your cover photo might be different as well. And I've noticed that like you've got some posts about like working with your company with like the diversity, equity, and inclusion team and whatnot. So just very briefly, like you kind of alluded to it, like talking with high schools and colleges and stuff like that. But like, what are the things or the opportunities that have come up just by this happening, by you sharing your story? What's come up, just very briefly, and then we'll get into some other things.
Sure. So no, very briefly. So basically just a couple of really, really big UK companies have approached me, which is crazy. But yeah, I just decided I'm going to change my LinkedIn profile because I've got a job now, so I don't really have to use LinkedIn to advertise myself in that way. So I'm now, I guess, changing it to be like trans activist, like in your face. This is me, like just, whatever. So I just decided I'm just going to go all out and just talk about being trans. And like you said, the post, it got so many people interacting and messaging me, and I just kind of want to use it as a platform to educate people and just keep talking about it, because that's the only way it's going to become more normalized in the world. So yeah, some big companies, weird things that I just never thought. It's all in the works. I mean, I'm hoping it'll happen soon, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting is like, I think I saw one post, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw one post that's saying that you're working with your diversity and equity inclusion team at your current employer. And I thought that was really interesting and a really positive sort of thing that, you're at this company. I don't know how many people that you worked with like knew your story, but now you're like throwing it out there on LinkedIn. And of course, like being an employee, like now your company's kind of getting some attention, I guess. And, the company has the option of how to respond, right? They have a choice of like how they're going to respond with this, right? And it's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's interesting because I talked with one of my colleagues like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was telling him that I was going to be interviewing you on the podcast, and he said, yeah, it's illegal in some states to be gay, or it's not like your you can be fired for being gay or being trans in some states in the US still. And I was like, wait, what? And you mentioned that to me a few weeks ago when we first met. I was like, get out of here. Seriously? I had no idea. Like that is wild to me that still exists. And so, I mean, given what you like your post and all the attention that it got, your company had an option basically to just like how they would respond to it. And they said, this is this is really cool. Like, let's bring you in to our like internal team and really like actually learn more about your perspective to try and, you know, make some policy changes or, you know, some other changes in the workplace. Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I think what you saw was, I don't think it was my company, but there has been talks within the company that, I mean, I've been reaching out to people in my company anyway to ask, is there things that I can help out with? So there are things in the works, I think, slowly, but no, the company you're on about is they're a diversity and equality like company. I think they basically consult a lot of companies throughout the world about how to become a more diverse and inclusive place. But yeah, it's insane how in America there are states where it's illegal. Like from posting on LinkedIn, I had a few Americans actually reach out to me and say like, "Hi, I'm American, and the company I work for don't know about me, and I'm terrified of losing my job because I really want to just be myself, but I can't. Does your company hire from America?" And it's just really sad. Like, you know, and again, that's why I posted what I did, because I'm in a country where it's, you know, right now it's fine to be trans, you know, but there's so many places in the world where it's illegal. Like I'm actually writing a post on LinkedIn. I'm going to post it, I think, tomorrow, about how there's actually 13 countries in the world where it's illegal to be trans.
Wow.
Just for being yourself, which is stupid. And that's not forgetting like the other countries where they have completely different laws in general, just for being trans. Maybe they've got their own little things. You might have to go to prison for like 5 hours because you're an alien. I don't know. It's
It's you know, just like a lot of these conversations with the LGBTQIA community, like there's been a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to go. Still a lot of things left that need to be done to make sure that, you know, we like people for like we're allowing people, and we're creating an environment where everybody can be themselves, because that's what it's all about, right? So really interesting, you know, that you posted this, that you got a lot of responses and attention and likes and comments and all sorts of stuff. And like you said, like there's just from one post, I don't know how many people, you said 6 million people saw it. I don't know how many people like learned something from that post, but it's really incredible. And I mean, now I'd really love to like really start to dive into your story. I mean, obviously you've talked a little bit about your story, and, you know, you said you've been living this life for 10 years now, and you've gone through some ups and downs and had some mental health struggles. So yeah, I'd really love to get into your story. And you and I have thought about doing this a little bit differently as well. So I'm just going to put a little preface in here that as George goes through his story, for anybody listening, as George goes through his story, I'm going to basically ask like any question that pops into my head. And George has said, no question is a bad question. And, you know, the immediate thought that you have in your head, just kind of blurt it out. And he's like, I'm not going to take offense to anything right now. Like, I want to basically hear what kind of questions come like that, just pop up in your head. And then we can sort of dive into maybe like how that question makes George feel uncomfortable or comes off really direct or rude, or how it would be, how I could approach the situation a little bit differently. That way, you know, it's definitely going to be a learning experience for me. And I'm hoping it'll be a learning experience for those of you that are listening as well. So that's kind of what we're getting ourselves into now.
Yeah.
Any comments on that before we get started?
No, I mean, I just want you to basically be, I mean, there's always that one friend in your friend group where they have no filter, and I kind of just want you to be that person where you just don't think, you just say, and everyone else is around you like, Adam, don't say that. Like, I want you to be that person, because it's just more interesting. That's what people are going to learn. Like, they're going to be watching this, and I could sit here and talk about the very like sugar-coated version of things you want to hear, but we kind of want to just go really into it and explain why that's a negative thing to ask somebody, or why that's, upsetting or triggering or whatever. I want to really just explain why.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And I'm all for it. So that's what this podcast is all about, right? Like diving into those stories that people don't talk about. So I think this is a perfect example for it. I'm excited. Like some of my colleagues I've talked to are like, tell me when the podcast, like when that episode is released. Like, and it it was a little bit surprising. So I was talking with two colleagues. One, he's I think he's in his early 50s, a white male who's in his early 50s, who is a director at like a biotech company. And I was talking with him and his son-in-law, and I was telling them about like the conversation that you and I were going to have. And the son-in-law had said like, oh yeah, it's, you can get fired for being gay or trans, like in a number of different states still. Right. And that we talked about that. And then my friend who is a director was just like, oh, tell me when that podcast episode gets released. Like, I'm really, really interested in that. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't necessarily think that you'd, be like super excited for it, but I'm glad that you are. I'm super happy that, you have that perspective because, there are some people that unfortunately don't.
It's like I was saying, the most random people messaged me on that day. The people I just never thought would give me the time of day to listen about what I have to say. It just, like, human beings are curious. We're all wanting to know things. So if anything's out of the norm, it's like, ooh, that's intriguing.
Yeah, and
I think.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. Like, you and I had this conversation too. Like, I think there are a lot of people that have questions about like the life that you are living, and or not you specifically, but a trans person, and how they go about making that decision and the process, and what their experience is like before, during, and after type of thing. But a lot of people get really uncomfortable even thinking about asking the questions, and then they never do. And I've definitely been in that situation before. Yeah. And so this is, I think, a great opportunity. So where do you want to start? Like, do you want to start like early on in terms of like how that, like, when did you know that you wanted to make a change, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll just, I guess, start from the very beginning and just be as brief as I can. So I was 19. I was very late to sort of like having girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever at that time. All my friends around me, like I said before, most of my friends were girls, so they all had boyfriends. And I just kind of thought, maybe I'm just a bit late to the party. I don't know what's happening here, but like, I'll get there. And I remember, I realized, okay, I like girls. So maybe I'm gay. But I never clicked with the thought of being gay. So I remember I was watching all these videos on YouTube, these coming out videos, and every single video I watched of this girl talking about how she's gay and has a girlfriend, I just didn't resonate with it, didn't click with me, just wasn't me. And just kept watching loads and loads and loads. All the suggested videos, they're all the same title coming out, blah, blah, blah. And I remember clicking on a guy's coming out video, and I thought, well, maybe I'll resonate with a gay man. Who knows? Like, at this point, I don't understand what's happening in my brain. Let's try it. So I watched this guy talking about himself, and he's telling the story of how he came out as trans. And, I was thinking, what does this mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, he's a guy. What? And he's explaining how he was born a girl, and, this is his life, and this is where he is now. And, this is a guy that, like me, looks physically male. You wouldn't ever guess. All the stuff that you typically say to a trans person. Like, I was thinking that, and I thought, that doesn't make any sense. What? He's a guy. What? And just everything he said, I related to. And it freaked me out. It really scared me. 19, and you've just finished sort of education. Maybe you start in university or whatever. You kind of trying to enter the world, but I'm picking the worst time ever to sort of enter the world with this different person again. I was like, are you joking? Like, why? Why now?
And that's really interesting because, like, I just wanted to jump in. Yeah. So, I mean, I think oftentimes we don't think about that. The fact that, like, in that situation, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, am I, like, I'm relating to all of these
Yeah.
things. Like, no, hold on, time out. Like, wait a second. Like, am I sure like this is what it is? And you're like, it freaks you out. And I don't think that we ever spend time thinking about that.
No,
as somebody who's like not trans.
I mean, no. So saying like back then, and again, same as you, I thought, no, like surely people who are trans realize when they're like born, right? Or when they're like 4 years old and they start playing with
or 8 or 9 or something.
Right? And I was like, that wasn't me. But then I looked back and I was like, oh shit, that actually was me. I was like, oh wait, no what? And then but then I don't know, I just kind of thought, no, like my childhood was very innocent. I lived in the countryside. You know, my parents didn't care what I played with. I don't know. I just never thought about it. And then just, you know, things started clicking the older I got. So 19, realized, okay, this has got to be what I'm feeling then. So I just started watching these videos religiously, all these different trans guys. And I should say trans guy means assigned female at birth and then now identifies as male. I just say trans guy. You can say transgender guy. It's just a long way of saying it.
Right, but if you so if you were to say trans male or trans guy that is born female and now is a male, and if you say trans female, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Yeah, that's correct. So gotcha. Trans woman, trans female, trans girl, whatever you want to say, it's basically born boy, now girl. To make it very blunt. You know, but it's So realized, I guess that's my life now. Had a bit of a breakdown. Thought, what am I doing with my life? And I just remember like telling my mum and my brother, and they were like, my brother was he was very, very accepting. He just immediately accepted it. And how I would describe him is he's very like hippie like. He's just like, yeah, that's fine, type of thing. And then my sister was the one that took it really hard. I've got a twin sister, so you can just imagine how.
Oh wow! Okay.
Like we literally lived the exact same life. So
wow, yeah, and all of a sudden
she just didn't. Yeah, she didn't get it. She was like, "No, I would have known. I would have known that. Why are you lying to me?" And just a lot of this, you know, hate towards the idea, not towards me, just the hate towards this idea of, no, you're just lying to yourself. It's just this. It's not real. You know, the classic things you get told. And it was just really hard few years where, you know, my parents didn't get it. My mum came around before my dad did. My dad, you know, they're the biggest supporters now. Like I couldn't fault them at all. But back then, like my dad was so against the idea. So he is a very traditional Welsh man. So I guess to like people who don't know anything about Wales, it's very old fashioned minded, very like man is with woman, you work, the men work, and you play rugby, and you know, just stuff that's very like manly. So when he obviously found out about me, he thought, nope, you are not living that life. And it was just very hard in terms of that. My friends from the get go, they were all supportive, thank God. It was a weird period, and then I just decided, right, this is the perfect time to sort of, I guess, start new somewhere. So I was going to apply for university anyway, and I thought, right, okay, well, what time better than now to just completely go into university as George? So I did, and it was really hard, like, you know, having to explain to people I'm not a girl, because again, I looked so feminine. I was, you know, didn't have a beard. I didn't have a deeper voice back then. It was just very, you know, everything was girl. It was like the default girl, you know? So I was a bit like, well, this is a bit shit, isn't it? Like, how am I supposed to go around on nights out trying to hit on girls that I find attractive who...
Right. So before any like physical changes at all, you were like, I'm a man. I'm a male. So and they were like, no, you're not.
Yeah. Like so what... It's like I forget how to explain this situation, because obviously to me it's normal to me. So back then, how I guess tried to present myself in the most masculine way possible was, so I've never had like hips or anything. I've always been quite pencil like very straight and very thin. Thank God. So I had that, on my side at least. So I could get away with, appearing very androgynous. And that's kind of what people assumed, that I was just like a very pretty androgynous girl. That's what I always got all the time. Which, okay, whatever. But then what I also did was I wore a thing called a binder, which is basically this, like, it's like imagine wearing like a corset, but to your chest, and it's just like sticking your chest down as flat as possible. It was like really, really painful to wear. You can only wear it like 8 hours max, and then it really deforms your body. Like, there are guys that I know that have severe like problems now because they can't sleep in it or all these things. But so I would wear a binder, every single day, and it would mean that basically I'd look in the mirror and I'd see a flat chest, and that would make me feel more happy and confident to go about my day. So that's all I had physically, was just a binder to make me look flat chested, and that's it. Everything else was literally girl. The only thing I had was a binder, and I cut my hair short. That's it. So day to day, it was always hi miss, or ma'am, or whatever, what do you call a girl in your life. And it was just a struggle. And, for years I was just really, really depressed. And, as any person going to university, you're going out drinking, you're trying to hit on people that you find attractive, or, you kind of think, oh, they like me, so I'll try and talk to them. And, there was a couple of girls where I thought something would happen, but then one of them would turn around to me and like say, oh, I don't date girls, even though she knew full well the situation. I just remember her telling me, I don't like girls. I can't date you. And I just remember thinking, that is the most shitty thing you could tell me. Like, why would you do that? It's at that moment where I thought, it was small moments like that which made me realize this is not a phase. Like,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, did you ever have a scenario where you were talking to a girl and things were going well, and then they would like everything seemed like you were going to, I don't know, hit it off, or it was going to go to the next step, and then a friend came over and whispered something in her ear, and then like she left, sort of thing, like, hey, that's a woman, you shouldn't be talking to her, or something like that?
No, because that's the thing. It's like there are some trans guys out there that don't even start hormones, and they can easily present as a male. Like, I never had that. I was just very feminine, right. So I didn't ever. It's like, I don't want to say the word fool, because I'm not fooling anybody, but do you know what I mean? I could never just be like, you'd never think that's a guy. You'd know. It was very obvious.
Okay.
So I never had that situation. It was very much that exactly why I had to explain. The first time I met somebody, I'd have to say, right, hi, my name's George. Just so you know, I'm not a girl. Like, I'd always do it in a very jokey way. I don't like making people feel uncomfortable. And I guess this is exactly why we're having this conversation about just being completely transparent with everything.
Yeah.
Transparent. But, I just want to explain to people and not make it an uncomfortable topic. So I just always used to explain to people, look, you'll see me one day, I'll have a beard. Just right now I look like a baby boy. Just let that sink in. So yeah, for years that happened. And then so there was no girl that would ever, find out that I was trans or find out I was actually a girl. I'd always be very honest from the get-go. And there was just a lot of times where, I was always messed around with in relationships sides in university, because I felt like they liked me, and then they'd turn around and say that they weren't interested in girls, even though they knew I wasn't a girl.
So they knew that you weren't a female, and then they would turn around and say that. Just was that like a punch to the face, or like a little stab to the heart? Like,
oh yeah. It was horrible. But I just remember years later, or maybe a couple years later. So in my last year of university, and I'd started hormones at this point. So I was so I started testosterone, which is obviously the male hormone, and I'd been on it for a few months. I can't remember the exact time frame, But I remembered at this point, my voice was deeper. I'm just to remember some of the like physical changes that my friends would all comment, because we'd go away home for the summer and then come back, and obviously things change. So I remember coming back, and my best friend at the time, he said to me, he's like, "Oh my God, George, you look like someone just hit you with a frying pan." And what he meant by that is because my shoulders had gotten broad, so I looked flat, like really like wide. And I just remember laughing at that. But I remember seeing the girl that rejected me, and she was with one of our mutual friends, and I could hear both of them, like they were across the road from me, and one of them went, "Is that George? Is that you?" And I just remember turning to them both, and I obviously spoke. I don't remember what I said. And I just remember the girl that I had a thing with, that like, you know, broke it off of her. You could tell she was really like, she couldn't believe it. Like because obviously now I looked masculine, I looked male, and it's as if she was kind of like punching herself, like, oh shit, like I messed up there, like type of thing. So there's been many moments like that where I've kind of like laughed and been like, you know what, that's kind of, you know, serves you right type of thing, or, you know, just next time don't treat someone like shit when you know, you don't know the full story. Or
be a nice human.
yeah, like it's just it's weird. But no, university was a weird place, but everyone discovers themselves in, like, you know, you guys call it college, I guess, but everyone sort of like discovers themselves there anyway, because you're forced into these different social situations, the most different people you'll ever meet, different backgrounds, you know, everything. So it was kind of like this really like fast forward moment of, okay, you're gonna have to figure out real quick who you are, because you've got like 3 years in this place, and then you're out into the world of job. So yeah, it was a weird situation. Then, you know, my third year is when I finally got my parents to help fund going private for hormones, because in the UK we have this thing called the NHS, which is like National Health
Services or something.
We don't pay for our medical care. Like we don't pay for our medical care.
Yeah, it's like Canada,
which is great. yeah. It's great places. But it's great. But, you know, say if I broke my leg, I could go into hospital, I could get it fixed there and then, you know, that day or whatever. But with trans healthcare here, it's really very, very slow, like bad. It's just so slow. And I always say, I still feel like, I mean, put it this way, I still haven't been contacted today. Like, I've been on this waiting list for like years, and I just haven't been contacted to say, like, do you want to come in for a talk? So they don't know where I'm at. So it's just a very weird thing. I don't understand it, but I was fortunate enough to go private, and it's just so ridiculous. And I think this is another thing that people think. Well, actually, it'll be interesting to hear your side of it.
Sure.
When you think of, when you think of a trans person now, and they've decided, right, I'm trans, I'm going to get hormones. In your perspective, how quick is that journey?
Well, I'll try to say it without the knowledge of the conversations that we've had. If somebody told me that they were somebody told me that they were trans and they just the hormone specifically, I would think maybe 6 months to a year, probably, like before learning more about it.
Okay. And would that be just like, would that be going private, or would that be going through the NHS?
I have no idea. What I mean is, like, somebody who's doing hormone therapy, I don't know if it's pills. I don't know if it's injections. I have no knowledge of that. My thought process is that from the time that they would start taking hormones would be like, they would be prescribed to do hormone therapy for 6 months to a year, if that makes sense.
Okay, I see. Yeah. I think that's the thing. I think it's so different everywhere. But like, so in my experience, like I said, I'm from Wales. It's very, we're very slow with catching up on like anything really. I'm from a very tiny little village originally. And I remember going to my local doctor and talking about how I felt when I was 19. And they referred me to a psychiatrist because they didn't know what to do, which, okay, fair enough. hopefully a psychiatrist will help. And the psychiatrist just took one look at me and said, or asked, are you wearing women's jeans right now? And I thought, what does that have to do with anything? I'm here to talk about how I'm struggling with my identity. I feel like I was born in the wrong body. Help me. And she just kept saying, well, no, are you wearing women's jeans? Because if you are, I don't think you really want to be a man. Like, she was just asking the most inappropriate.
That's like the whole, like with the, that reminds me, sorry, of like, you know, people that experience sexual assault and they're like, well, what were you wearing?
Yes. Yeah. It was just, I remember
So
don't get
stupid.
angry at all. Like, it takes a lot for me to get angry. I'm a very, very laid back person. And I just remember, you know, especially in like a very, like a doctor's sort of environment, I wouldn't get angry anyway, but I just remember feeling really angry, and she could read my face, and I must have been reacting in a certain way. And she was like, you're getting aggressive now. And I was like, no, I'm just very like, I don't understand where you're coming from. You're a psychiatrist and you're telling me, like, she was basically insinuating that I was a transvestite, which is somebody that dresses in the opposite gender's clothing. And I just remember thinking, no, I'm not, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would I'm 19. I don't have a job at this point. Where would I get the money to go and buy a full-on male wardrobe? Like, the clothes I wore anyway were pretty, like, unisex. Like, they weren't, you know, so I just thought that's such a weird comment. But then she made it worse by then saying, look, if you do really feel this way, you're going to have to come back in 2 years to prove that you still feel this way. And you're going to have to give me proof that you've been living this way. And I thought, what, 2 years? And I just remember leaving that room so upset and just genuinely feeling like there was no point to existing at that point, because I thought, 2 years, why? Like, what?
Yeah, that's basically like it's a phase. You'll grow out of it. Yeah, so here's like, a 2 year.
And it didn't help that she had like no knowledge of trans. It's like she just didn't have a clue anyway. So it was kind of like, I'm trying to prove somebody that has no knowledge or no experience talking to someone who's trans. So it just frustrated me.
And what's so sad about that is that instead of saying, listen, I have no knowledge with this, I'm going to refer you to somebody else that might know what they're talking about, she just gives you some bullshit answer and asks you about your clothing.
Oh, yeah. And I remember, like, she referred me to, like, a counselor, and even he couldn't help me. He said, look, I remember him even saying, I actually don't know what to do. All I can do is help you with anxiety and depression, which, yes, you do have, but I believe a lot of that stems from your identity. And I was like, well, yeah. And
yeah, no shit. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. And he referred me, or he suggested me attending like a group which happens once a month, which is like half an hour away from me in another town. And it was for trans women, like middle-aged trans women. And I thought, I'm a trans man. 2, I'm not middle-aged. So I wouldn't have any sort of like common interests, or like, just, there would be such different conversations, you know? So I just thought, that's like, imagine, I don't know, it was just a weird thing. And I just thought, right, I'll just have to find my own help then. And, you know, luckily there were people online. It was mostly Americans, to be fair, that I could find to talk to, because for some reason the UK back then was just mute. Okay, there was nothing. There was nobody. And when I did find people, it was like finding a needle in a haystack. I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I just, you know, it just was weird. But yeah, in terms of like timelines and stuff for healthcare and things, it varies from different places in the world. But from my experience, when I did go private, it was a very long-winded game there. It was like, I went private and it was in London. So I live 4 hours away from London. Yeah. And at the time, I believe it was actually one of the only places that did private healthcare for trans people. It was the only place that I knew of that I could research into. And it was so expensive. It was just stupidly expensive. Like, it was, you know, a train from where I live to London's, you know, we're talking like over £100. And then not only that, I was too afraid to go on my own. So I would have to like ask, oh, can my mum, can you come with me? So she'd come with me as well. So that's like, you know, £200 just for a train ticket there and back. And then the actual consultation with the doctor, which is literally just a half an hour chat, is like £300. So it's like stupid money just for like the sake of a chat for half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But then it wouldn't just be that one chat. It would be several, like, you know, a lot for like months, you know.
And you have to go back and forth every time. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, you know, and it was hard, really, like, I'm so appreciative and fortunate for having my parents that could help me. But, you know, there's so many trans, you know, people out there that have to go about their life and just wait for healthcare to just help them, and it's just, it is horrible. But yeah, so, even going private, it wasn't fast.
Yeah. So a quick question. So you asked me about the hormone therapy and how long I thought that it would be. So how long did you do, or are you still doing hormone therapy? How long is that actual process?
So basically I started hormone therapy. I think it was like maybe a year of solidly of going back to and from the private doctor. And then they could sign me off, or, yeah, okay, I guess you are trans or whatever. Yes, let's sign you on to hormones. And then hormones, basically, a lot of people think, so do you think you have to just take hormones for like a set period of time, or how long do you think you're meant to take?
Well, that's what I said, like probably 6 months to a year, like an initial dose maybe, and then less often after that. That's what I was saying.
I thought when you said that, yeah. So I thought you meant, how long does it take you to start taking? Like,
no.
So the doctor sign you off. Oh, okay. No, so basically, for me now, I think, well, yeah, it's trans women as well. You have to take the medication forever.
Oh, okay.
So like every 3 months, I get this injection in my butt cheek, which is the most, honestly, it's so painful. It's like oil, like it's so thick, and like you have to like heat it up to like, you know, make it warm so it kind of like goes a bit thinner, I guess.
Yeah.
So every 3 months I have to get this injection, and it's like, I mean, every 3 months you kind of forget about it. It's not something you think about, but there's like different people do different things. Like I know there's I think in America it's actually more common to do it every 2 weeks, and they have like smaller doses and stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So is it like a larger dose initially, and then once you get to a certain point, then it's like now it's every 3 months and it's longer in between, or is it the same dose forever?
I think I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I don't think that there's any trans guy out there that has been, you know, publicly. Like the internet now has all this information, so I don't think there's any trans guy out there that has this information out there that's maybe longer than 10 years. Or I don't know, not longer than 10 years, maybe 20 years. I don't know. So I'm not sure about the doses. I mean, I feel like I'm a guinea pig, basically. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Gotcha. And so, you know, my next question, coming to this, trying to be as blunt as possible, is like, so what are the different stages of being trans? Like, what's that, like the transition period? Like, what are the different stages? And maybe we can just get into that.
Yeah. So, it's different for everyone. So for me personally, I was happy enough just having testosterone and then having top surgery, and that's kind of where I thought I'm me now. I can be myself.
Okay.
You know, it's always the classic question, and I feel like you're going to ask it, so I'm going to leave it over to you now. What questions without a filter?
Yeah. Well, so I have a couple questions. So I mean, definitely about anatomy. So I mean, like when you were describing it earlier and wearing that, I forget what you called it, a binder. Yeah, when you were wearing a binder, I had a couple questions. One, I was like, did you have big boobs, and it was like really difficult to like push it down, and like did you go through like daily pain like wearing that? The second question was, I don't know if this is common or this is an extreme thing, but like, did you ever think of just like actually trying to cut your boobs off? Because I mean, we've heard of those stories, but I don't know how realistic that is, right? And then the question now, sort of getting into the transition side of things, is like, how did you decide on like which surgery to have? And, you know, if you were to actually get a like a penis like surgically added on. Like, how the hell does that work? Because obviously I know nothing about these things. I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't either.
No, so with me, definitely the thought of just cutting my boobs off, God, it happened a lot, like, but the realization of I'm not a doctor, so I probably shouldn't do that. Would always come into my
Thank goodness.
I might die. But look, there was many times where I would Google before starting hormones and like having to wait to get the yes to start them. I'd Google like, the black market type of thing, like get testosterone illegally.
Really?
You can buy it online.
Interesting.
And any trans guys watching this, if there are any, just never do that. It's so dangerous. You don't know what you're injecting yourself with. But I just remember that being quite a thing that I could, I'd hear about it online and stuff. And I'd always think about it. But, at the end of the day, I just thought right now, it's going to happen one day. I kept telling myself that it's going to happen one day. It will happen. So in regards to my chest, I was very skinny, but I did have a big chest for my size, I would say. I don't know what the size is like over there, like A, B, C, like, like, so A being small, then you're going up like that. I think I was like a C or a D. And I just remember wearing the binder was very uncomfortable. Like the classic, when girls say, oh, that feeling when you take your bra off at the end of the day. And I just remember thinking, Jesus Christ, you've never wore a binder, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus. But like, it was it was so weird. Like I remember like my mum, when she came to get my surgery with me, my top surgery, the doctor had to obviously like use a felt tip and like draw where he's going to make the incisions and stuff. So I had to be completely shirtless, and my mum was in the room with me, and she'd not seen my chest. Why would my mum see me topless anyway? So my mum saw my chest for the first time, and this again, physically, like facial wise, and like structure, like bone build and everything, I was becoming to look more male. So she saw my chest, and it just didn't look like. Imagine me now with boobs; it would just look a bit weird. You'd be like, "What's happening? I don't understand." So I remember she saw that, and she started crying, and she's like, "I didn't realize like that's how you looked." And you've had to like look at yourself in the mirror like that for like years. I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of how I feel inside my head. Right. It's just my brain wasn't matching my appearance for a while, but we've caught up now. Like my face looks how my brain thinks now. But yeah, so that was.
But that's just a quick comment. That's so interesting that like, just that one little moment in time, and all of a sudden your mom almost understood like that much more about you and what you were what you were dealing with, know?
Yeah, it was weird. Like because I remember saying to her, like, why now? Like, why does that make you upset? She's like, it's just hit me. I was like, oh.
And how many years had you been wanting to become a male?
Like, what was it, like 3 or 4? It was okay. It was quite.
So it was a while. It was 3 or 4 years, and she's finally like, oh, that's so interesting.
Like I was growing a little beard here and there, and she was like, my voice was as it is now. Like, to society, if I wore a binder, I mean, even if I didn't wear a binder that day, which I never would go out the house with that binder, but you wouldn't clock that I'm female. I looked very male, so it was just weird that she said that. I just remember thinking that's really quite funny. But yeah, so top surgery, yes, no brainer for me. That had to happen. Just I could not leave the house without wearing a binder. It made me feel really uncomfortable. And I think this is the thing. It's like there's so many people out there that you don't even have to be a trans guy to feel uncomfortable having a large chest. Like I know, like there's tons of girls out there that don't want to have a chest in general, things like that. So for me, that was just one of those things that I just wanted to feel more masculine and just have that chest. And in terms of like, it's called bottom surgery, where that's what all, the anatomy comes in, the classic question of, have you had the surgery?
Yeah.
And, it's like, what surgery? There's a million surgeries. And yes, I've had that many times.
Does anybody ever ask you just like straight up, like, George, do you have a penis?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I was just wondering if people beat around the bush or they actually asked you.
No. I mean, it depends on the person. I guess there's some blunt people out there, isn't it? And especially, when you go on a night out and you're drunk and you meet other drunk people and you tell them, "Oh, I'm trans," and they're like, "Do you have a dick?" And it's like, what? Like, chill out. Like,
does it work? Does it work like normal?
Yeah. How do you have sex? Like, well, just all these weird conversations. It's like, okay, let's just rewind. I'm George. Nice to meet you. Let's talk. Jesus, it's just weird. But like, my every time someone asks me that really uncomfortable question, like, yes, it's uncomfortable, but at the same time, I do laugh at it because it's so stupid. There's loads of trans people that would get really offended by that. And again, this is why I want us to have this conversation, because there are trans people that find a lot of these topics very hard to talk about. And, for years, I would find them really hard to talk about, but I personally am just comfortable now to talk about these uncomfortable topics.
So if I met somebody that was a trans male, how should I ask them about, or should I ask them at all? Like, if I was just curious and I was just like, hey,
that's the thing.
Like, how do I approach that conversation?
I think that's the thing. It's like, realistically speaking now, if me and you met on the street now, and I guess we could just flip it. So if I wasn't trans and you were the trans guy in this conversation, and I just met you, and my first question to you was, Adam, and like, just my first, I don't know, I'm just trying to think, like, say, it's so weird. It's just like, just imagine me coming up to you and saying, "So what's in your pants?"
Yeah, I'd be weird. I'd be like, "Hi, nice to meet you."
You'd probably think that I'm trying to hit on you, right?
Yeah.
So, like, whenever someone asks me that, it could be the most manliest guy ever that I know very well is straight, that has a girlfriend, but it's always those that ask me this question. And I always have this sense of, are you trying to hit on me? Like, I don't understand where this conversation is going. What do you want from this? Will it make your day better? Where's this going?
Will it make your day better? Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what? That's the thing. It's like, you've got to ask yourself, do I need to know this information? Does it change my life? Am I having sex with that person? Okay, maybe it might need to be talked about. Do you know what I mean? It's like all these things where, would you want that person to ask you that information?
Right. So so I mean, that's a scenario where, like, we're kind of like strangers. We don't really know each other. But let's say that, like, I have like a friend at school who, let's say I'm in a program, like a master's program, for example. And, I know, like, this person, actually, here, I have a great scenario because this has actually happened in real life. So in my undergraduate degree, my first year, like, I was living in the dorm that was on campus, and on our floor, there was somebody that was transgender. I didn't really talk to them to really understand, like, what their story was or anything. And this is very, like, the typical, like, I have questions, but I'm not gonna just ask them type of thing. But, like, we see each other in the hallway, we say hi, like, they're very nice. Unfortunately, there was a time that I was playing. So I was playing for, like, the football team at this university, like American football. And there was a time where we had gone out, like, a few of us had gone out. We came back to the dorms, and, like, we had been drinking and stuff like that. And one of the guys on my team made a comment like, she's not even a guy. Don't even say that to me. And this person just ran off crying. And then I was just like, dude, what the hell? Like, you're a dick. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not nice at all. Totally uncalled for. And I, like, ran into the bathroom to, like, see if the person was okay and, like, and talk to them. So, but again, like, there was, scenarios where it was like, I'd like to ask questions because I'm curious and I would, just get to know you as a person. Right. No, there wasn't, like, this attraction level or anything. It was just simply like, we are people, like, let's get to know each other. But I didn't necessarily know, like, how to ask, questions about it or anything like that. So, like, in that type of scenario, like, how do you suggest somebody would have a conversation with them or talk to them? Like, let's say me and that person went out for coffee, right? And we were sitting there, we were getting to know each other. Like, how do I what's the appropriate way to sort of ask questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing anyone should do realistically, I mean, especially in today's age, because you just don't know. You could present the most masculine way possible and you could still identify as they or, she, whatever. It doesn't matter. Each thrown at the end of the day. So it's like, I think the first thing you should do is just make sure you always introduce yourself and your pronouns first, because then it gives them the sort of a chance then to be like, oh, okay, so Adam's pronouns are he/him, or okay, so that's when I can sort of tell Adam my pronouns and what how I feel. And then I don't know, it's like you kind of sometimes, it's just like a normal way of saying, like, introducing yourself, isn't it? Like I kind of almost want it to be like when you meet somebody and you say my name's George, you kind of just want to say it like it's so casual, like, oh, my pronouns are he/him.
No, yeah, no. I mean, we've had a conversation about this before, but I didn't necessarily think about it. Like, I think about it differently now that we've had a conversation. So why is the pronouns important? Like, especially like, you've talked about it before. Like, you need to start every interview, like the person who is interviewing, like that person should automatically start every interview asking the person about like what their pronouns are. Why is that important? Like, what can happen if they don't ask? Like, what are the thoughts that are going through your head and stuff?
Yeah. So for me, it's like, say I went for a job interview, and this was before I started testosterone, before hormones. So I looked very feminine. I just had short hair, and going into the job interview for anybody is scary enough, isn't it? It's nerve-wracking. You just the whole sort of pressure is on. Like, I need to get this job. Added on top of that is the fact that you're trans and you may look different to how the person's perceiving you. So at the time, I'd be looking very feminine. They're going to read me as a female. They're not going to refer me as he. They might slip up and say she or miss or whatever. The second that would happen, my brain, I guess, or my whole being would go into like self-defense mode or like panic mode, and you kind of just switch off, and I'm not there anymore. Like, I cannot think about how to answer a question about the job or give any examples. So it's kind of just ruined the interview process completely for me at that point. Whereas if they just sat me down at the beginning and said, hey, look, my pronouns are he/him or whatever, what are yours? It then gives me space then to be like, okay, they are aware that I identify as he/him, even though I may not look masculine as of yet, or maybe I never want to look masculine, but at least they're aware these are my chosen pronouns. This is how I want you to respect me. It gives me then the opportunity to feel comfortable in the room and then go, okay, let's talk about the other thing in the room. Like, we're not talking about the elephant in the room here. That's done now. And I think that's the thing. It's like there's always that elephant in the room until it's addressed. And that's how I've always felt before I've explained to people.
Yep. So well, yeah,
it's just getting
even you talk about elephant in the room. Even when we were talking about hormone therapy and surgery and stuff like that, we were both kind of looking at each other like, who's gonna, like, is Adam gonna say it? And so I was just like, how does that surgery work? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to kind of say it, or else it's just you're beating around the bush and nobody's really actually saying it. And like, there's you've described it to me as there's just you think that somebody might be so focused on this person, his name, like their name is George, but they look like a girl, and they're focused so much on that rather than like actually judging you or rather than asking you about your qualifications and your skill set and how you're a good fit for the company and for the job. Now,
so it gets it out. Yeah. It just gets out of the way.
Yeah. Now I do have a question. So I'm going to play sort of devil's advocate and try to like, and also like kind of, I have just a blunt question. It's not necessarily how I think, but it could be how somebody else thinks, where, you say like, oh, they should ask me about my pronouns, because if they don't, like, I'm just going to be thinking about this the whole time. I feel like somebody could have the thought of like, well, I mean, that's your own insecurity. Like, that's your own problem. Like, why do I have to make this environment to like best suit you? Like, how am I supposed to know that? Like, what would be your sort of response, or why would you suggest that it's still like super important to ask about the pronouns?
I think it's just important because it not only makes the other person feel comfortable, but it would just make everybody in the real room feel comfortable. Like before, we were wondering who's going to bring up bottom surgery, who's going to say it. Like I knew it was going to come up, but I kind of just wanted to wait for it. But it's the whole situation of everybody's aware there's a situation in the room that's not being addressed, and it just creates this weird tension where you could just literally just get out of the way. It's done then. So it's kind of like people just think, oh, it's a you problem, not a me problem, but you're making it everyone's problem by not talking about it. It's like, if you somebody walked into a room crying and you kind of ignore it, it's a bit, you kind of want to go and make sure that person's okay. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's just a no-brainer of just talk about it, ask why it's upsetting,
Yeah.
It's just common courtesy and being a genuine human being.
Yeah. Now, would you recommend the opposite as well? Like, let's say that I was trans and I was entering an interview. Like, would you also recommend that? Be like, hi, I'm Adam and my pronouns are he, him. Like, would you recommend that, or would you just say like, wait until the company asks?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I've never had that happen to me, but I think to be fair, I think maybe the best thing would be, so for me, for example, my pronouns are he, him. So in the world's eyes, I look male, therefore I am male. Like that would be the automatic response is, you read someone's face and within seconds, you've already assigned their gender. So for me, I don't have to give my pronouns because my pronouns are already the default pronouns that someone's going to assume I am. Whereas it would be a different story if I was non-binary and, I was they/them, or maybe I'm they/he. Maybe that's when I would have to go in and say, hey, look, my pronouns are actually they/them. So I'm not a he, even though I look like a he, I'm actually them. So it just depends on you as an individual. If you're more, if you want to just be assumed, then that's kind of like, your call, I guess. But if you don't want someone to assume your gender based on what you physically look like, then it's your place to say, look, this is how I would like you to, it's just like, to me, it literally is like saying, this is my name.
Yeah.
Before you say, like, my name's George, it's not Jimmy. So please call me George, not Jimmy. Do you know what I mean? It's that's how simple it is in my head anyway. I know it's very like controversial, but I guess for me, it's just the fact I've lived this way for 10 years. So I've got like, it's in my brain.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is like, it's such an easy thing. Like it's such a small thing just to say, hi, I'm Adam. My pronouns are he, him, or to say, or to be the person doing the interview and say like, hi, nice to meet you, George. My name's Adam. My pronouns are he, him. Like, what are yours? Right. That like 5 seconds could make a huge difference to somebody. Yeah. Right. And so it's such a small thing. So I don't know if it necessarily needs to be like super controversial or anything. Like it's amazing how sometimes it becomes controversial, even though it's a tiny thing that we can do. Right. And I know that, what's interesting too is we talked about this a little bit. The first time we talked was, I think I had this assumption, and I know that there are other people that have the assumption that's like, oh, well, George is a trans male, so he knows everything about trans, and he knows everything about like all the different pronouns that exist now because he's now trans, right? And you were like, no, I don't. Like, I don't know all of them. I don't,
No. It's like, I mean, there are tons of letters. It's just like constantly being added. And, there's always something to learn about it. Like I'm always learning, and it's like, and I hate to connect or like maybe even
associate.
What I'm basically trying to say is, associate. That's right. When people think, oh, being trans is basically like being gay, like they're not. Sexuality and gender, completely different things. Sexuality is who you like, who you find attractive. Gender is who you yourself identify as. So for me personally, I am a trans man, so I'm basically a straight guy. I like girls. That's it. I'm pretty much a very boring like example of a trans person. There's like, I guess people always think trans people are like these different like rainbow people, like pink hair, and they love all people, and they're pansexual. They identify as they / them / he / umbrella, like stupid things like that. But like, there's just like, there are also very like, you know, dimmed down versions of trans people in the world, like myself, where just a normal guy, literally living my life. But yeah, like for ages, I didn't understand non-binary people, like for ages. And I remember meeting somebody in university, you know, this was 10 years ago now. And I was obviously trans at the time. And I remember meeting somebody non-binary, and I thought, oh my God, that they kind of are like me. Like, it's the first person in real life I'm meeting that's kind of like me, but not, because they're not a trans guy. And I remember thinking, like, why don't they just want to commit to one? Because I was like, right, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy, so I'm just going to commit. And I remember thinking for ages, this person just isn't committing. Like, come on, like, just choose. But, you know, after many years of obviously being educated on the matter and reading about it and just learning and realizing, do you know what? It does make sense why there are so many different genders in the world, because why do we just limit ourselves to two? It gets very confusing. It's kind of like when you think about space and it just doesn't end. It's just like, whoa. But yeah, I'm still learning. And I think that's one thing that people do think, is that if you're in the LGBT community, you know every single thing that has to do with LGBT.
It's not true at all.
No.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't tell you about what, you know, gay men, what their lives involve. Like, I'm not a gay man, so I don't understand that aspect. Like, I have many gay friends, but that isn't my life. I think like the whole reason people get confused by trans being the LGBT is because people then think, oh, it's a sexuality. But the only reason that trans people are in that category is because we are not a normal thing in society. We're not straight. We're not, you know, born the way that a normal person is born. They're a boy and they've grown up to be a boy. So that's literally the only thing. It's very strange.
Yeah, no, it's.
But yeah, I feel like we've gone.
Go ahead.
I was going to say we've avoided the bottom surgery conversation, and I
oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
But I'm just plugging in my charger. No, so basically, I just wanted to say how, for me personally, I've there's been times where obviously I've questioned bottom surgery, because obviously to be like the full package or whatever you want to call it, but there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to that sort of thing, and I don't think people realize how dangerous it can be. You kind of just think, oh, it's just a surgery, and then you kind of
they're like we sewed this shut, we put this on, and then you're a guy. Like
yeah, it's really not that simple. So it's like people just think, oh, have you had the surgery? And then they think, once you've had bottom surgery, you are now male. And it's so strange. Like I read a fact today, actually. I think it's in Iran, you are only legally allowed to change your gender to the one like your chosen identity, if you have bottom surgery, and then you are cleansed or sterilized or something, which is very, very weird. So it's just a weird thing. So people think to be trans, you have to have the surgery, meaning down there. And that is so far from true, because, you know, again, I could walk down the street now. Nobody is going to think, what's in his pants? They're just going to assume I have everything that a normal guy has. And the thing is, when it comes to bottom surgery, with trans men, I can't speak for trans women, because obviously I'm not a trans woman. That is a whole other procedure. I know that their surgery is actually a lot easier. I could be wrong, but that's just from what I've heard. When it comes to trans men, though, you're basically having to attach something to the body that isn't there. So, you know, that sounds very difficult as is. Like, how do you do that? And so basically there's a couple of different ways. So there's two different surgeries. One is called phalloplasty, which is basically where, I think this is the most common one that people would hear of, is basically where they do create the penis basically from skin grafts. So they'll get like maybe like a giant chunk of the top of your thigh. That's literally like, a big square piece of skin. And they take it off your thigh, and I think it's like maybe 2 thighs, and you've got this massive scar, and it just looks really like painful. And there's 3 stages to that surgery, and it could take years to have all 3 stages complete. And it just looks, to me, it looks terrifying. Like, the result to me isn't worth it, purely because the chances of actually not having any sensation at all is so high, all for the sake of something that looks physically male. Is it worth it to me? No, not a chance in hell. Like, I just don't think it's worth it, having like pain and just agony and discomfort for like years of my life just to gain something that gives me nothing but looking in the mirror and seeing something more male. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So when people ask, have you had the surgery? And then, because people just, what do you think? Do you think it is just a case of you go to a doctor, you get surgery, and it's done in like a day? And you walk out?
No, I didn't think it was that. No, I didn't think it was that simple. But I also like just had no idea like how complicated it could be. I didn't even think about like the possibility of not having sensation afterwards. And so honestly, I haven't really given it a whole lot of thought. I didn't think that it was like super complicated, but I didn't think that it was just like like just sticking, just plug and play type of thing.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. It's a weird one. It's like another thing that they do as well for that surgery is they to I guess actually get the length. So they have to obviously use the skin grafts they've taken from your body. So they have like, you can do the thigh skin graft, your like upper arm or lower arm skin graft, like the back of your back. They find like the best skin on your body that suits to create this like penis basically. And I think the funny thing is you can actually choose the size.
You can or you can't.
But I think it just depends.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you can. I think it does depend.
Because automatically, like I hear voices in my head from like some of my high school buddies being like, "What? You can like choose the size of your dick? That's awesome! You just stick it on there. That's great."
Yeah, no,
but obviously not that simple.
Yeah. No. I think it obviously comes down to like how well your skin is, or like I don't know. But I think that they do recommend like but. I guess it's kind of like, when I guess girls go and get their boobs done, you can pick a size, but they do recommend like what your skin is.
Right. And everybody's different. It's not a one size fits all. No, so right. Okay. Understood.
Exactly.
It's a good example.
Exactly. So when they're creating the penis now, they have to put in this metal rod. Again, I could be right. I haven't had this procedure done. I haven't looked into it an awful lot, but this is just from what I've remembered and gathered over the years. So they use like a metal rod or something, some sort of rod. Maybe it isn't metal because that would be a bit weird. I think it's metal for a few months to get the shape to stay that way or something, and then it changes or something. But basically, to like have like penetrative sex and things, you have to like squeeze one of the balls to make the penis go up. To me, that's a bit of a mood color. That's just like, for me, that's a bit, no. That's what I mean. It's like everyone's different, So like when people say, have you had the surgery? They don't know all.
Right. And they kind of, And in
surgery, so
without understanding all the details, you would kind of think that it's just like, oh, it's just going to operate like a normal functioning penis. Like, why wouldn't you want that?
Exactly.
And if it was that easy, I'm sure that the decision would be easier.
I'm pretty sure, if it was that easy, then probably yes. But no, I've had people ask me like, oh, so, if you had the surgery, would you be able to have kids? Like, could you produce children with your girlfriend? And it's like, are you really asking that? Like, no, I don't just automatically become a biological male internally. Like, it's not how it works. And it just really baffles me how little knowledge people have.
Yeah, absolutely. So Just to sort of kind of start wrapping up here. So I have a few last questions. So on the side of, for somebody who, whether they're trans or not, but for somebody who my mind is thinking more specifically, not trans, like where can they learn more about this? Like where would be a great place for somebody to start to educate themselves a little bit more on this whole process if they wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, the best place, where I learned 10 years ago was YouTube. There's loads of YouTube videos, and obviously 10 years later, there's bound to be a lot more.
Yeah.
They document that. There's YouTubers out there that document their lives, these trans YouTubers, and, they do a great way of just showcasing how it is normal to just be a trans guy or just trans in general. But, there's a lot out there where, they go through the different types of surgeries, the different types of, how to get hormones, or there are tons of videos out there. Like I recently, like a couple of years back, started watching videos of trans women getting different surgeries that I didn't know that they had done. Like, there's just a lot. There's a lot to learn. It's it's all out there. All you have to do is just Google it. Simple, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Just it's all there.
All right, cool. And same thing for so if somebody that is listening that is trans, or what doesn't matter what stage that they're at, like would you recommend the same thing for them trying to understand more about like what the procedures are and what the timeline kind of is and what the sort of process looks like? Yeah.
So like I always sort of kind of compare it to getting a tattoo, and it's stupid, but it makes sense. Like you wouldn't get a tattoo. Most people wouldn't get a tattoo without thinking about it first. You kind of just want to make sure you are sure, because there are things that, I'm aware we've been talking for a long time here because there's just a lot to talk about, but there are things that are very, like you cannot reverse them. So, if I decided, I want to be a girl again, then, I'd have to get laser hair removal because my beard won't just fall out, or my voice will stay as it is. My shoulders have grown like 3 inches wider, so they're not going to shrink. It's all these different things where, you've got to be 100%. So definitely do your research, try to find, people on YouTube or something that you connect with. Like that's what I did personally, is I found a few trans guys that I really related to, just followed their stories, joined Facebook groups of trans guys, talked to them, just try to find people to communicate with. It's like any sort of support group, really. You just find people to talk to.
Yeah.
So you're not alone, really. So you can find.
Yeah, I'm glad you're mentioning that, because I'm sure that it's difficult anytime that you feel like you're alone or that you don't fit in, or there's so many question marks. It can be overwhelming to Google something and see the 4 million, search results, and walk through a video and be like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Go to another one. No, that's not what I'm looking for. So, reaching out to people is definitely always, no matter what the topic is, it's something that I always recommend. And I hope that if anybody's listening to this conversation, it's been helpful to answer some of the questions. Where can people find you online if they wanted to reach out?
Yeah, so I've got obviously my LinkedIn, which is literally linkedin.com/George Wyn Evans. So Wyn is Welsh, WYN. And then I've now created an Instagram, which is george.w.evans. And that's where I'll be posting stuff.
Awesome. Great. So I'll put those 2 links in the description, and I've just got a couple quick questions left here. So the first one is, I know that we've been through obviously quite a lot, and we could still talk about this for a few hours. I think there's still so many questions that I have. So honestly, I might have you on a follow-up episode, because there's still so much that we can talk about for sure. But one of my questions is, when through your journey specifically, if there was a moment, when did you start to feel like you were living your authentic self? And what advice would you have for anybody who might be in a similar situation than that you were in, to take a step towards living their authentic life, their authentic selves?
Yeah. Well, honestly, for me, it was even before I got top surgery and started hormones. It was the second I just decided, right, I'm George. I'm going to just physically do what I can to make myself feel comfortable, which meant for me cutting my hair shorter. Again, guys can have long hair. Doesn't make you not a boy. Like, Adam, you've got lovely long hair. You're a man still. For me, it was just, you know, I'd had long hair my whole life. That was related, you know, that to me was girl at the top of my whole life. So I thought, I'm going to cut my hair. And that made me feel like me. And, you know, that would be my advice, is to just genuinely just do whatever you want. Your body is your own body. As long as you are not physically hurting yourself, like we said before, do not cut your own boobs off. You're not a doctor. But if you can cut your hair or dye your hair or do whatever you want to make it feel like you can look yourself in the mirror and go, that's cool. Like, I really like that. You know, I feel good about myself today. Like, do whatever you can to make yourself feel comfortable. The second you start feeling comfortable, you'll start to realize in your brain then, like, that's kind of how I felt for me, is the second I started to physically change how I looked, that's when my brain started to realize things like, that's why I like, or that's what makes me happy. So I think just making yourself feel happy in day-to-day life doing things, it then starts to resonate with here, and then you kind of start ticking boxes then, okay, that's what will make me happy if I do this.
Yeah. And did you also feel like once you started doing those little things, and of course, like, there was a lot of discomfort and vulnerability, like, you know, cutting your hair short, for example, did you start to feel as though, like, hey, you know, this isn't so bad. What else do I want to do that I've been putting off? Like, did you start to feel like that at all?
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, I was obviously terrified to start hormones for ages because I thought that's really scary. Like, what am I going to sound like? What am I going to look like? It's a kind of a scary thought to think you're going to look like a different person. Like, imagine you now decided you wanted to be a girl. What would you look like as a girl? Mm-hmm. You don't know, you know? So it was terrifying, but, you know, it's just doing a lot of research and just trying to picture as best as you can what your future will look like. That's all I had in my head, was just kept thinking about that. And I guess just a lot of it was just living each day at a time, just taking one day at a time, because it can get very overwhelming. And just, you know, just checking in every day with yourself and making sure, okay, this is what you want, right? Yep. Okay. Okay. Just check in. Okay. We're still there. That's pretty much it. Just day by day, take it slow. Don't stress yourself out. It's not a task. You know, at the end of the day, it's your life. So you've got a long time to figure it out. It's not, you don't have to figure it out tomorrow. You could be 50 years old watching this. You could be 70-year-old watching this. You don't have to be realizing when you're like my age, you know, at 29, you could realize tomorrow. You could realize when you're 99. It really doesn't matter. Just each day, take it slow.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that you brought that up. And you know, I try my best to feature different guests and different stories that come from different walks of life and different backgrounds, different skin colors, experiences, everything, because like you said, it doesn't matter if you're 55 and living in India or if you're 25 living in Canada. Like, you can, you know, if this is part of who you are that you're discovering, like, it's okay. Right. And it doesn't have to happen, you know, when you're, you know, we think, I mean, automatically, I think that, you know, when we hear about, when we talk to people that are gay or bi or trans even, you know, we think that it happens, like, you know, we hear those stories like, oh, like, you found out when you were like 7 years old, really? But that's not for everybody. Like, people discover things at different ages because of different experiences and whatnot. Exactly. So really, really happy that you brought that up, and really appreciate, you know, just your time and you being on here and telling your story and being vulnerable and talking about the elephants in the room and the bottom surgery and everything. Because again, I think it's a really interesting conversation that doesn't happen as often as it should, because again, like, I'm literally just learning about you as a person and learning about a topic that I just didn't know about. And, you know, I think if we had more conversations like this, then the world would be a little bit of a better place, because it wouldn't be so much, you know, there would be less room for judgment and for and for bigotry and everything, there would be a lot more space for, compassion and understanding and empathy. So thank you so much for, first sharing that post and then responding to me, because I'm sure you had like 1,000 messages and you're like, who's this guy? Like,
no, I mean, I remember when you messaged me and I saw what you're all about, and I thought, no, I'm going to have to talk to this guy, because anybody that's sort of an advocate for mental health and, sharing stories that will hopefully help somebody, that's kind of all I wanted to do. And the second I posted, I thought, okay, it's going to help me reach different audiences now. And that's all I want to do, is just talk about my experience. Because yes, there are tons of trans guys out there, like I said, but maybe my story might be a little bit different, or maybe, my personality might relate to somebody in some way, or, it doesn't matter about being trans. It's just that personality, I guess, or you just don't know, dear. It's mental health is a very broad thing. It can relate to anybody. So yeah, I'm glad you reached out, because
yeah, me too. Well, again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, your vulnerability, your story, your experiences. And well, I mean, this is the start of a cool friendship. I mean, like we just met a month ago and we're just like, yeah, we talked for like half an hour, 45 minutes the first time. We're like, yeah, we're friends now. Now we're going to be on you're going to be on my podcast. Like, I think it's super cool. It's a really incredible world that we live in. So
it is.
Yeah. Thanks. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, George. And I know it's going to inspire at least one person around the world. So we'll be in touch, and I'll stay up to date with your story and what you're doing.
Cool. I will stay in touch too. Speak soon.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it and that it inspired you on your journey to living your best life. Now make sure to check out the show notes below for a rundown of today's show with all the important links, such as where to find the guest online and important resources that they may have mentioned. Also make sure to share this episode with a friend or family member and subscribe so you get the notifications when new episodes are released. I absolutely love hearing feedback from you guys, so I encourage you to share a review on the platform you're listening on and let me know what your biggest takeaway was from today's episode. Now it's time to go out and build the life of your dreams one step at a time. And remember, the only way to be comfortable is to be uncomfortable first.